Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, how much do you contemplate aging? And when you do contemplate it, if you do, how do you do that? You really want to ask yourself a lot of questions about the process of your life, what it means, or maybe just let it go and have fun. But some of us are very contemplative, very much interested in how we are aging, and some of us are aging more greatly than others. And so there's this wonderful book, and I have to say wonderful with exclamation marks because I love it so much. It's called The Privilege of Aging, Savoring the Fullness of Life. And our guest is the author of The Privilege of Aging, Kamla Kapur. Kamla, welcome to Energy Stew. I'm so happy to talk with you because I've read your book. I've dog-eared almost every page in your book. It's so rich and beautiful. I couldn't wait to meet you and experience you.
Thank you for having me. And it's always a pleasure to talk with somebody who has read the book and is responding and resonating with it. I'm happy to talk to you.
So, thank you. And you know, every page of your book, that's why I dog-eared almost every page, had such a richness about your life, that about the way you're contemplating everything in your life, because there's so much of your frailty in it, so much of your wonder and beauty of life in it. Fascinating life because you have lived equally on two continents, in India, not only in India, but in the Himalayas and on the West Coast in the United States. And you married a guy from New York. And yet your childhood was in India, and you have a great respect and love for India.
Yes, and I enjoy being amphicultural, as I call it, because, there's good and bad in every culture. So this way I can be choosy. I can pick what I want and reject what I don't,
Uh-huh.
and benefit from both. I really enjoy yeah, I love having a mind that thinks in three different languages, for example, because every language is so distinct and has words that other languages don't have. And, uh, I was very surprised. Lately, I've had a couple of challenging illnesses, three autoimmune diseases, and through this whole period, one of the wonderful things that happened was many wonderful things happened. I think that even diseases are sent to us as gifts, to bestow all sorts of insights into us. But one of the things that happened was that a voice surfaced in my brain that spoke to me in Punjabi, which is my root language, my mother tongue. And I was very surprised that I had this voice in my head that said, "Oh, sit down and have a cup of tea now, or, that's all right. You can put half an extra teaspoon of ghee in your dal. Go ahead and enjoy it. I mean, it was just so nurturing at a time when I needed that nurturing. So,
And the fact that it came in a language that you weren't using, and and because so you knew that it was maybe talking to the child in you.
Yes, you know, certainly instructing the child in me, why don't you go rest now? Lie down, you know. So it was like um, a voice in my head guiding me, you know.
I love the fact that that's so distinctive. Very few people can have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, it's not like you know, psychotic and I can hear voices. It's just an inner voice. And if you notice, actually, all of us have a lot of inner voices, you know.
Yes, sure.
We have so many inner voices that we don't pay attention to.
Well, I think we're guided by our souls, and
Yes,
our minds don't think for us. We don't think for ourselves. We have thoughts, but there's something running us bigger than us that is us and knows better, and so brings us through life in ways that are magical.
yes. And beyond even our own intentions and our own strivings.
Well, of our mind rather than our soul, no, because our soul is ahead of us.
Yes.
And so the stories in your book are so fascinating because you question everything, everything, and describe everything in such beautiful detail. This book is beautifully written. It's prose. I just it sings. There's such a magic to the words and the richness of them. Um, Anybody who wants to read a book that will speak to their hearts, this is a great book for that. So
I'm, hu-
congratulations.
I'm humbled by your words. I'm humbled by your appreciation.
Well,
And
I've read a lot of books.
it's what an author wants to hear, you know.
But I've read tons of books, and this I savored. Actually, it felt magical because what you spoke about just hit notes in me about my own questions about life. And granted, uh, we're on relatively different paths, and yet there were a lot of things that were very similar to my issues and my questions. And you have chapters about deep deep chapters that I love to read about your parents and their lives and their fears and their strengths and your relationship with them. That was so beautiful and honest. And and so it's another word I have for your book is that it's raw honesty. You're raw in this book.
Yes, I couldn't help but be, you know. I couldn't write a book um, that I didn't sort of expose myself in because that's the kind of book I was looking to read and I couldn't find it. So I decided to read my own, to write
That's
my
funny.
own, you
And yeah,
know.
you succeeded because it's, the subtitle is Savoring the Fullness of Life. And by fullness, you mean the whole spectrum. And so much of it is self-questioning. There's a lot of self-questioning in this, but it's in rich ways that we should all self-question. I mean, if we're arrogant about ourselves, we're not going to learn anything. We're not going to understand our own hearts.
Oh, you know, all the gurus and all, I mean, you know, the Western and Eastern guides of all traditions speak about self-examination, and you can't have self-examination. Self-examination is a tool to know yourself, and you can't self-examine without questioning yourself, you
Without
know.
honesty.
Yes,
Yeah. And you've had really difficult experiences because when you were younger, you were married to a man who um, couldn't live with himself.
yes.
and ended his life very brutally and in front of you, base almost in front of you. Uh,
Yes, yes, it was very challenging period of my life, very difficult, and um, also very rewarding because it gave me a lot of fodder to self-examine and and to, you know, question myself, question my own behavior, my own words, and all of that. Of course, question my own ego actually, because it all boils down to the ego that defends ourselves, that defends us sometimes, you know, for our own harm, because sometimes we need to be much more vulnerable than we are to the human condition, to ourselves, and to all the suffering in the world.
but I don't know if it's to our own harm so much as there's a blessing in harm. You know, there's silver linings to it. And so where our struggle is where we find light. And eventually, and so, and you go through so many of your struggles in this, and there's so and you know, we have one chapter here called "The Benefits of Denial."
Yes. See, you caught me out there where I'm defending denial. Um,
But you
and
also have a chapter called "Stupidity Has a Purpose,"
yes, exactly.
and you know the names of your even the names of your chapters are very um, prepare us to what the beauty is in each chapter. And you have one that says, "I am a many pattern kaleidoscope," and you are. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you come from, you know, you are such a multicultural person.
Well, I think that one of my hopes in writing this book was that some things I say about myself are true of all of us. And like you
Yes,
said, you know, we are all multifaceted kaleidoscopes. We just haven't done the soul searching and the self-examining and the self-contemplation and self-loving, by the way.
right.
There's some,
So that brings me to a chapter called "What Endearing Fools We Are." So we're so and that's what this book is to me. It's endearing, and so much of it is not that I can identify with a lot of the logistics in your life, but so much I can identify with so much of the heart story in your.
well, I feel that unless my heart is in something, I can't write about it. And so if my heart falls out of it for some reason, I have to talk about that heart falling out of it, you
That's
know?
beautiful because that means
Uh,
it hasn't. You just have to describe the story around it.
yes, and to tell the truth, you know, to tell the truth about my process as well.
And but it's such a process where you examine um, all of your life and all of the relationships your father. I'm fascinated by your father. You had so
Oh,
much to say about him that was so fascinating, and you know the way he dressed and how he looked, and but also just his manner, and he was a dedicated Sikh, and
yes.
yeah, and it's fascinating to um, the book, you know, shows your fascination with him and what a good father he was.
What a good father he was. Absolutely. You know, my hope ultimately also is that by reading my book, people will be encouraged to write down their own stories because we have our own lives. And I hope that the way I talk about my life and my parents, my culture, that people would take some encouragement from and write their own stories.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I think that's important to so many of us who are at that stage in life where we want to record it and don't feel like we're good enough at writing it in meaningful way. And I can write all the logistics of my life, but how meaningful can I be in writing it? So reading your all every page is so it has such meaning in it that it's really instructive and can help people. Well, not just about writing about life, but just about thinking about life. Because
yes.
I really like the idea that this book is the contemplation that many of us are in, and the freedom you take in contemplating every aspect of the spectrum, I think can help a lot of us do the same for ourselves.
Yeah, freedom. That's a really important word. And you know, freedom to be as honest as you can be. Um, because you know, no healing can take place without that acknowledgement and truth of your feelings and you know, your opinions and prejudices, all of that.
Right? It's a very healing process, and so um, I would think that our listeners, after they hear the show, all of a sudden they'll start processing parts of their life that because their subconscious has been getting ideas from this and saying, "All right, I'm going to start on this right away."
Well, I hope so, and I think that those people who are encouraged to write, I would advise them not to think about sentence structure, not to think about how good the writing is. Just pour it out, you know.
Like, what do you
Just,
care about? Where,
huh? Yeah.
what, maybe we should just say, well, what's my first important caring that I want to relate to? And it doesn't have to be in sequence in life. It could be all of a sudden there's something in childhood and then something that happened in a marriage or in some aspect or work that made a big difference, and you want to make sure that you're respecting that and bringing it to the fore.
Bringing it to the fore, because that's what it's all about, bringing it to from the subconscious to the conscious. And writing is a great tool to do that. Um,
I'm laughing because you do such a good job at it that it just, it's amazing how um, I don't know how long you spent writing the book because it has so many insights that um, I would think you were just percolating, 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 and aha, okay, and put that on paper, and then percolating, percolating again, and some people can write a book in a weekend or a week. And
no, I don't. My books take their due of time, and I would say that I took 2 years to write the book, and 2 years suffering because I couldn't find an agent, and everybody rejected the book. And then you know, and then it finally got accepted in its fourth year at Inner Traditions, and I you know, the universe sent me an agent who, somebody I've known a long time as the publisher of the the magazine Parabola that published some of my
Oh,
stories.
I
He
know that
became,
magazine. Yes.
yes, and he became an agent, and he started my career as a writer, and he's bookending it. So I'm very pleased. His name is Joe Cullen. He's wonderful, a
Uh-huh.
wonderful man.
And Inner Traditions is a wonderful publishing house. And
He, there were so many synchronicities in this process, Peter, that if I were to mention them, it would just blow people's minds, you know.
but that's how life should be. I think synchronicity and serendipity are huge in our lives, and so many people don't pay attention to them,
Yeah, they're magical.
right? And I
Yeah.
remember there was an author who wrote a book about if you keep following your synchronicities, it'll lead to synchrodestiny.
Oh, good,
So
good.
yeah, and so I'm so happy that you have this book out there that represents the richness. It says savoring the fullness. I would say savoring the richness of life because my heart was just singing reading this book the whole time, and I was going, yeah, yeah, yeah. It just agreed with my heart, and and there's so many parts of it that we align with. No matter who we are, there it's just we might have a different story about it, but it's the same meaning,
Yes.
and so that's beautiful too. So um, and and it's fascinating just to think of your life. I just love the fact that you go back and forth between India and the West Coast, and you have beautiful homes in both places. But I also like the fact that you grew up in a household in India with servants, and servants are very big part of life in India because
Yes.
it helps sustain people.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it's uh, it's part of one of the reasons that I go back to India, because we have a lot of help there and I can entertain. I never entertain in America because I don't like to make anybody, unless I have to, even a cup of chai. So, but there was a time before my illness where I loved to do that, and I love to feed people, and I can do that in India. I can have my large family over, I can have friends over, and I don't have to sweat it.
Lucky you. And but that's the life there. India is it's a vast country, of course, and it has many different cultures. And but it is a culture. It is a place where people need work, and
Yes.
and and they really appreciate being of service because there's a lot of heart. Because when you have servants working for you in India, they do it heartfully.
Well, my cook is like that. We treat them very well. They have health insurance, they have life insurance, they have days off a month. We sit together um, uh, frequently during festivals or birthdays. We sit together all in table and eat together. I do not like the way servants are treated in India, the hierarchies that I grew up with. So my husband and I, and my husband's on the same page as me with all of this. So they're part of our family and our tribe. You know,
I think
so
that's the future of humankind is to have more respect for everybody. And
exactly.
coming out of because when the British ruled, they weren't very kind, and
No,
and so there
no.
was a conditioning from that kind of leaked out to the local population. But we're coming into much more consciousness here. around the world. But coming back to your book, we're getting near the end of the show. And um, is there a website or how can people find out more?
Yes, it's kamlakapur.com, and it's uh, there's a K in between, and it's not it's spelled KamlaKapur.
Right.
So that's my website.
And the book is available on Amazon, etc.
Yes, everywhere books are sold.
Right.
Yes,
I'm so happy for you and to know you. Such a privilege. And the book is called The Privilege of Aging, and it's also a privilege to know you. And I
and
I really feel so full of feeling from your book and and the heart of it.
well, thank you, Peter, for having me, and thank you for appreciating the book and for your wonderful words about it. And I hope, my hope is that it not only reaches but helps in some way.
No, I
Um,
think it will in many ways because it's also because of the honesty of it and how rich your life has been with all of the troubles in it as well, that people can feel better about their own troubled lives and understand that there's a richness to it, there's a silver lining to it, there's so much growth to it and heart to it that they can see in your book that they can identify with.
thank you,
Sure.
Peter.
Well, thanks so much for being a guest on Energy Stew. I hope we can talk again. I just so happy to know you. It really is a joy for me. So thanks for being on Energy Stew.
Send me an email and I'm here. We can talk again.
Oh,
I'd love
good.
it.
Great.
Yes.
And so this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.live. I can be reached at peter at heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.